Hi, today we're going to take a look at a little project that I've been working on. It's the MameBoy Advanced SP. A nice little project that I've been involved in probably for about the last fortnight, where you take basically a circuit board that's been designed specifically for this job of converting an SP shell into a Retropie setup. What you need is to go to this website where you can get all the boards and the components really necessary to complete this conversion. You can buy basically just a bare board, or you can buy a pre-soldered board. I'd probably recommend going for the pre-soldered board. It's only £10 more. You can buy all the accessories such as the LCD screen, speakers, SD cards. You can download a pre-configured SD card image, which is really helpful because everything's set up for you. You are going to need a Raspberry Pi Zero, 1 or 2. I've gone with a 2 because obviously it's slightly more powerful. You're also going to need an SD card. I think minimum really would be a 64 gig. I think that's what I've gone for. This was got me involved in the project. I saw this on eBay and thought it was a really cool idea, and I did purchase this kit. You're going to need a little adapter if you're going to convert or move your ROMs onto it through USB or Ethernet. That will be needed. That's where I bought my case from. You can buy the case from there, but I did buy my case from Retro 6 with some new hinges. As you can see, I've already installed the shoulder buttons, the speaker and the Zero onto the actual motherboard of the unit. Nothing really particularly complicated in this particular part of it. I did buy the DIY board, which meant I had to solder the buttons onto the other side. I'm not really going to show that because it was a major trauma, so I do recommend that you buy it pre-done with all the buttons and everything on there. That's the SD card pre-configured, and the image has been dropped onto there. There's no ROMs really on it to start with. There are a few bits and bobs that you can just try out, but you are after going to transfer your ROMs in. So that's the board as itself. It's a pretty simple board. Again, you can buy it pre-configured, and I would recommend that you do that. Also, I chose a standard shell, which meant that I had to drill the 2 extra buttons that go on from the board that go into there. You can again buy this all pre-done for you, but it just means it's a bit more expensive. If you're going to do it this way, what I've done is I did buy a clear shell, so you could look through the clear shell onto the board, and then you could see how and where to start your drilling. You start with obviously a small pilot hole, and then gradually, what I'm doing here is gradually working my way up through the sizes of drills until I felt that the button slipped in and out nicely into the holes that I drilled, ready to accept those buttons. But again, you don't have to do this. You can just use the 2 standard buttons, A and B, just like a normal SP, but it depends on the games you're going to be playing. I just wanted it completely fully configurable and have all the options available to me, so I just gradually worked my way up with the drill bit until I felt that the buttons were a nice snug fit. I didn't show me putting on the screen the LCDs because basically I've done a video before where you showed me installing the LCD, and there's not a lot to it. You just drop the LCD in and then attach the screws. I've left this one clear because it looked quite nice at the back, so a little bit of filing just to get those holes really nicely orientated and the buttons slipped in and out nicely. So the next thing to do is obviously drop in your buttons and your membranes. Because these are slightly different buttons, they require a slightly different membrane. They're a tactile button, so there's no bits on the bottom there. So we'll just get these buttons all arranged and put into place. It is a little bit fiddly, but just take your time. I think there was a lot of trial and error with this. I hadn't got all the parts and that available ready to go, so there was a lot of trial and error and back and forth. Really just trying to get this nice. The instructions weren't particularly great, but it was fairly straightforward, so I just gradually took my time. Once you've got it all in, get it powered up, which you can do straight from USB-C, which is a nice touch, just to make sure everything works. I did have a number of issues with the buttons where I had to reinstall buttons, resolder the buttons in because they weren't working quite right. I'd overheated when I'd done the soldering. So what I'm doing here is just using an Ethernet to USB adapter through that little adapter that I'd got. I did try installing the ROMs through USB, but it didn't really work very well, so I decided I was going to purchase this adapter. There's my IP address. It all has been ready to quite nicely. Here I'm just using FileZilla as an FTP client to transfer the ROMs over. just to gain access to the files and transfer my ROMs over. Once I've done that, obviously it reboots and it reruns Emulation Station like any other Retropie setup. And it just loads up into your normal interface, which again is all pre-configured for you. You can change it, there's nothing to stop you changing the interface, the screen, or the flash startup, you know, as normal Retropie stuff. But I've left it all pretty standard. I do find that Retropie you can dig yourself a whole Retropie and spoil the installer. So this is just a nice clean install straight from obviously the manufacturers of this product. I've put a few ROMs on this. This PlayStation 1 Ridge Racer is probably going to be the most taxing one I'm actually going to put on it. Because of the form factor and the size of the screen, a lot of the games aren't going to particularly work on something this small. But Ridge Racer, you know, it works really, really well. It isn't the greatest viewing angle for me to play, obviously in front of a camera, so please forgive me if I'm not doing very well. Ridge Racer runs perfectly on this. There's quite enough horsepower, and so I'm sure it'll run anything, you know, you can throw at it, apart from the usual N64, Sega Saturn, those sort of things. You know, this is probably about as powerful as you're going to get on this sort of size board, until, you know, there's new incarnations of it, and we've got a bit more horsepower. Obviously the Retropie runs perfectly well on the Raspberry Pi 5 if you've got that much more horsepower and a bit more RAM, so that's probably going to be something I'm going to cover in a later video. But this runs absolutely perfect. The screen is really nice, the viewing angles are good. It's not great for viewing the smaller text that you need when you're trying to set up the Raspberry Pi and the Retropie. Also, the screen is a little bit too small, but there is a HDMI port on the back of that board which would allow you to put an extra monitor on for setup purposes, just so you can see a bit better of what's going on. But again, this is a pre-configured install, so everything's pretty much done for you. So you have, all apart from adding the ROMs, there's not a lot you need to do. I would recommend purchasing the main board pre-installed. Like I said, the buttons are very, very fiddly to get right. Even when they're soldered on perfectly, I've had issues where the buttons don't become responsive until it's warmed up a bit, and I think that's really my fault, maybe using a little bit too much flux or things like that. But overall, I'm really pleased with how this install's gone. I think now I've come out the other side, I've recently put a new battery onto this, so it lasts much, much longer, so I'm really, really pleased. So if you got to the end of the video, thank you for watching. I hope you found this interesting and you might decide to build one yourself, but thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next video. Bye for now.